Sometimes the greatest betrayals don't arrive with fury, but with silence, signatures, and a cold smile. And sometimes the deepest strength is born not in comfort but in collapse. He pushed for divorce while she was 8 months pregnant, then transferred all assets to his mistress. They say marriage is built on love and trust, but sometimes the most sacred bond shatters. When deceit and selfish ambition collide in today's story, we delve into the life of a devoted, heavily pregnant wife blindsided by her husband's sudden demand for a divorce just a month before her due date. Worse still, she discovers he's quietly transferred every significant asset into the name of his secret mistress. What drives a man to turn his back on the woman carrying his child, and how far can betrayal go before fate delivers its karmic blow? Buckle up. This isn't just a story of heartbreak, but also of extraordinary resilience. A thick, syrupy warmth enveloped the streets of Charleston, South Carolina. The summer sun bore down, as if determined to capture the spirit of youth in its blazing arms. Alina Carr Whitmore was still in college. When she first met the man who would become her husband, Marcus Langford, they were both students at the University of South Carolina, a name well known for its blend of academic rigor and vibrant student life. Alina had been a focused psychology major, her dream to work with children rooted in her own childhood experiences volunteering at local shelters. Marcus, on the other hand, was a business administration student, charismatic and brimming with ambition. They met through mutual friends at a local coffee shop just off campus. Alina was buried in a textbook about child developmental stages, sipping her third latte of the afternoon when Marcus approached her, tall, lean, with an infectious smile. He introduced himself politely, complimenting her scholarly dedication. Alina, shy yet intrigued, allowed him to join her. They discovered their families were both from South Carolina, though from different towns. An easy conversation ensued, light banter about classes, future plans, and the small joys of everyday life. Marcus offered to walk her back to her dorm that evening. After parting ways, Alina realized she was smiling to herself, an unfamiliar giddiness in her chest. Over the next few weeks, they began spending more time together. Their connection deepened, nurtured by the heady cocktail of young love and shared ambition. In a matter of months, they were officially an item. When they graduated, Marcus already had a job lined up at a reputable accounting firm in Columbia. While Alina pursued a postgraduate, Alina pursued a degree in counseling. They dated long distance, bridging the gap with weekend visits and nightly phone calls that stretched into the early morning hours. The romance soared. Flowers, handwritten notes, stolen kisses, midnight confessions of undying devotion. Alina's parents, small business owners who ran a neighborhood florist shop, adored Marcus from the start. They saw him as an upstanding, goal-driven young man who treated their daughter with kindness and respect. Marcus's own parents were proud of their son's accomplishments and the way he had found a sweet, intelligent partner who would stand by him. 3 years after they first met, Marcus proposed in grand fashion. He rented a boat on Lake Moultrie, inviting close friends and family as the sun set over the shimmering water. He knelt and asked Alina to spend forever with him. Her tears of joy glistened, and her yes echoed across the lake. The families cheered, cameras flashed, and the future felt as bright as the golden rays of sunlight dancing across the waves. Their wedding was a church ceremony steeped in tradition. Alina wore a white lace gown that had been passed down from her grandmother. Marcus, dapper in a charcoal gray tux, recited his vows in a trembling voice thick with emotion. At the reception, they danced beneath twinkling fairy lights, oblivious to the rest of the world. To Alina, it felt like the beginning of a perfect life, surrounded by everyone they cared about, sealed with blessings and well wishes. Their union promised a partnership that could weather any storm. In the early days of their marriage, happiness overflowed like a bottomless champagne glass. They moved into a cozy suburban home on the outskirts of Columbia. The first year was filled with discoveries, learning to coexist in shared spaces, balancing chores, finances, and personal goals. Marcus worked diligently at the accounting firm, quickly climbing the ranks. He had a knack for networking, making connections with clients, superiors, and colleagues. Alina secured a counseling position at a local nonprofit, working with children from vulnerable backgrounds. She'd come home tired, but fulfilled, eager to share stories of her day. They would spend weekends exploring Colombia, brunch at local cafes, visits to the Columbia Museum of Art, and Sunday picnics at Finley Park. When they were at home, they cooked together, tried new recipes, and invited friends for game nights. Everything seemed picture-perfect on the surface. Then came little hints that the marriage might not be as seamless as it appeared. Marcus started bringing work home whenever he had a big project due. He'd lock himself in the study for hours, ignoring Elena's gentle reminders that they should make time to connect. The door would stay shut well into the night, and sometimes she'd find his dinner cold and untouched on the table. The silence between them grew heavier, more suffocating with each passing week. His attention turned toward building a stellar reputation at the firm. At first, Elena believed this was temporary, a new employee's determination to prove himself. She didn't mind. She prided herself on being supportive. But as months stretched toward the second year, something shifted. The warmth in his eyes dimmed. The way he touched her, once spontaneous and affectionate, became absent-minded, mechanical. Marcus's late nights became more frequent. He traveled more often, sometimes missing important events like Elena's birthday or her parents' anniversary. Even on nights when he was home, he was distant, scrolling through emails during dinner, retreating to the study mid-conversation. When Elena tried to bring up these concerns, Marcus dismissed her gently. "I'm doing this for us," he would say, insisting that the long hours were necessary to secure a better financial future. Elena remained patient, telling herself that sacrifices were part of building a successful life together. Still, the words began to feel hollow. Promises made in the dark didn't hold in the morning light. Yet something gnawed at her. It was in the way Marcus would lose patience quickly, snapping at small things like a shirt not ironed perfectly or dinner not ready on time. He would sigh loudly, mutter under his breath, slam a cabinet door shut without looking at her. Apologies became rare. So did eye contact. Over time, Elena observed a slow shift in his demeanor. His once gentle approach turned more curt and demanding. Even so, Elena reasoned that stressful work could do that to anyone. She made excuses for him, determined to keep the peace. She told herself it was just a phase. But sometimes in the quiet moments before sleep, she would wonder, was she already losing him? When they were near their third anniversary, Elena found herself daydreaming about motherhood. She loved children. Each day at her counseling center only strengthened her longing to have a child of her own. Marcus was initially hesitant. He wanted more financial stability, a bigger house, a promotion at work. Still, as the months wore on, he reluctantly conceded. "If it makes you happy, let's start trying," he finally said, though his voice held a distant edge that Elena tried to overlook. She wanted to believe it was enough, that he meant it, but his eyes didn't smile when his mouth did. After nearly a year of trying, Elena discovered she was pregnant. Elation coursed through her veins. She had bought a pregnancy test on a whim after feeling unusually exhausted and nauseous. The faint double line made her heart race. She announced the news to Marcus that evening, waiting with trembling excitement for his response. He forced a smile, murmuring an obligatory, "Congratulations." For a moment, Elena felt a pang of disappointment that his reaction more effusive, but she chalked it up to shock. He'd adjust, she told herself. In the coming weeks, Elena's body changed rapidly. She experienced morning sickness, cravings, emotional ups and downs. She expected Marcus to show more involvement, perhaps accompany her to prenatal checkups, read baby books, help plan for the nursery, but he was increasingly absent. Another big project had landed in his lap, requiring late hours and even weekend work. Anytime Elena tried to pull him into baby discussions, he would nod mechanically, say he was tired, and promise to talk about it later. The promises never came to fruition. Her excitement about becoming a mother was met with silence, or worse, disinterest. Slowly, Elena took the reins of all baby preparations alone, picking out crib designs, comparing hospital options, drafting birth plans. Her mother helped. So did a few close friends. But she felt her husband growing more distant each day. It was as if she was preparing for this child alone, both physically and emotionally. The final blow came around her 6th month of pregnancy, when she started noticing credit card receipts and bank statements that didn't match their usual spending habits. restaurants they hadn't dined at, fancy boutiques in neighborhoods Elena never frequented, even hotel stays in the city. Each discovery felt like a dagger, a quiet scream beneath the surface of her composure. Confronting Marcus always led to a swirl of excuses: client meetings, networking dinners, out-of-town conferences. Elena's suspicion grew but remained overshadowed by her love and trust. After all, they had pledged their lives to each other. She reasoned that maybe his firm was footing some of these bills, or that these were standard business expenses. With the baby's imminent arrival, Elena tried to avoid stress. She told herself she was overthinking it, that love sometimes wears the face of sacrifice. Instead, she immersed herself in the unborn child's future, hoping Marcus would snap out of this phase once he held his baby in his arms. She clung to that image like a lifeline. Little did she know, the cold storm of betrayal was already swirling overhead, just waiting to strike. It happened one morning when Elena was 8 months pregnant, her belly round, her ankles swollen, her sleep restless. She woke up craving orange juice, only to find Marcus already dressed in a suit, pacing the living room. "We need to talk," he said tersely. The air crackled with tension. Elena's heart lurched. She had been preparing breakfast, trying to appease a rumbling hunger, but lost her appetite. In that moment, she turned off the stove and joined him, bracing herself. She'd assumed this would be about finances or a sudden relocation for his job. Instead, Marcus's words sent her reeling. "I want a divorce," he said, his eyes cold and unyielding. Elena felt all the blood drain from her face. She stared at him, struggling to comprehend. "A divorce? Now? I'm 8 months pregnant, Marcus. Please tell me you're joking." His response was mechanical, as though reading from a script. "It's just not working out. We've grown apart. I've already prepared the necessary papers." For a moment, Elena clutched the back of a chair to steady herself, her legs trembling. "Why? We can talk about this. We can go to counseling. Anything. Just why now?" Marcus exhaled sharply, his impatience rising. "Don't make this difficult. The sooner we make a clean break, the better. You have your life, and I have mine," Elena pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. "This can't be real. We have a child on the way. How could you do this at a time like this?" Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he shoved a pile of paperwork toward her, urging her to sign. Elena refused. She couldn't imagine dissolving her marriage mere weeks before giving birth. She demanded an explanation, but all Marcus offered was a vague statement about irreconcilable differences and a dismissive, "My happiness is important too." The words hit her like a slap. Her happiness? Her needs? Did they ever matter to him? Elena couldn't stop the tears streaming down her cheeks. Fear, anger, and bewilderment all churned in her chest. She felt physically ill, faint with betrayal. She gripped her stomach protectively, as if shielding the baby from the cruelty unraveling before them. She needed answers, but Marcus brushed off her questions. He jammed some documents into a briefcase and stormed out the door, announcing he'd be back later to talk more. For hours, Elena sat on the couch clutching her belly, tears staining her blouse. The silence in the house, once comforting, now felt cavernous, a void that echoed with every shattered illusion. She called her mother, who rushed over, horrified by the news. Together they tried to piece together the puzzle. Why would he do this now? Was there another woman? Had the stress gotten to him? The agony of unanswered questions weighed heavily on Elena's heart. By the time Marcus returned that evening, Elena was prepared to beg, if only for the sake of their child, but Marcus's coldness was unrelenting. He had more shocking news to deliver. He was leaving the marital home immediately and expected Elena to move out soon to allow him to handle property matters without interference. Stunned, Elena demanded to know what that even meant. Marcus simply informed her to expect a formal notice from his lawyer. Over the next few days, Elena discovered the full depth of Marcus's betrayal in small, soul-crushing increments. She uncovered credit card statements that revealed lavish gifts, expensive dinners, and out-of-town getaways. She found text messages on an old phone bill, suspicious correspondences with a single number. Curiosity and heartbreak fueled her search, and she finally confirmed her worst fear. Marcus had a mistress. Her name was Dahlia Cruz, an up-and-coming model who had met Marcus at a corporate gala 6 months prior. While Elena was nurturing a life inside her own body, Marcus was busy wining and dining Dahlia, showering her with every luxury Elena herself had never requested. The realization felt like a hot brand on her heart. This was not a simple momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated, ongoing affair. But the true bombshell landed a week later. Nearly every major asset that Elena and Marcus owned, house, cars, investments, had been transferred into a trust under Dahlia's name or joint ownership. Between Dahlia and Marcus, the betrayal stung like 1,000 needles. They had combined their finances over the years, each contributing, yet in secrecy. Marcus had manipulated the system and ensured that Elena's portion was locked away from her. Everything they had built together, brick by brick, had been stolen in silence, turned into lavish gifts for another woman. Panicked, Elena called banks, lawyers, even old family friends. She learned that Marcus had, months ago, started the legal processes to shift assets, forging or coercing signatures, setting up shell companies, and funneling money into accounts that Elena couldn't touch. The paper trail was chilling. Her name was disappearing, bit by bit, from everything they once shared. Not only was she facing the heartbreak of divorce during her vulnerable final month of pregnancy, she was essentially about to be left penniless. Her parents were livid, wanting to confront Marcus personally. But Elena, cautious about her unborn child's well-being, didn't want more stress or confrontation that might harm her pregnancy. She sought out her best friend, Jordan, a fierce attorney who specialized in family law. Jordan listened, horrified, and vowed to do everything in her power to protect Elena's rights. But the legal tangle was complex. Marcus had meticulously planned his betrayal. He'd even gotten Elena to sign a few documents earlier in the year, disguised as mortgage refinancing or investment strategy, which in actuality were preludes to transferring ownership. That revelation shattered her. The betrayal wasn't just cruel. It had been calculated, strategic, and masked behind a smile. Jordan did some digging and discovered that Marcus was about to file a petition to expedite the divorce, claiming Elena was unstable and financially irresponsible. He cited the unborn child's fatherhood as a separate matter he intended to address, but made it clear he had no intention of remaining in the marriage. Jordan prepared a counter-strategy, but she warned Elena this would be a grueling fight. A war not just over money, but over dignity, over truth. Meanwhile, Elena's health took a turn for the worse. Stress skyrocketed her blood pressure, forcing her doctor to recommend bed rest. Each day she felt the baby moving inside her, both a source of immense joy and a stark reminder that she had to stay strong. She whispered to her belly at night, promising the child within that no matter what happened, she would protect them. Yet the betrayal weighed heavily on her mind. Nightmares of losing her home, her security, her peace haunted her. She hardly slept. The baby's due date loomed like a silent clock ticking in the background, intensifying her anxiety. Despite feeling physically and emotionally drained, Elena resolved not to let Marcus's betrayal define her future. With Jordan's help, she explored her legal options. Her first priority, however, was a safe and secure environment for her child's birth. Her parents insisted she move back into their home. She agreed, realizing that staying in the house with uncertain ownership was risky and that living alone could be dangerous if her health deteriorated further. Marcus, however, was furious to learn she had legal counsel. He turned up at her parents' doorstep one day, demanding to speak with Elena. Her father refused to let him in, an angry standoff ensuing on the porch. In that moment, Elena saw a side of Marcus she'd never seen before. An entitled, spiteful man who believed his actions were justified and that Elena's resistance was an act of betrayal toward him. The irony stung. She told him she would fight for her share of the property and, more importantly, for child support. Marcus sneered, retorting that she was overreacting. He claimed that once the baby was born, they could do a paternity test and that he'd handle his responsibilities as he saw fit. Elena was left trembling in disbelief at his arrogance. Nonetheless, Jordan filed motions for a temporary restraining order against any more financial maneuvers by Marcus. They aimed to freeze the assets so that at least the partial ownership Elena had contributed wouldn't vanish entirely. The legal war began, overshadowing what should have been a joyful nesting period for Elena. Still, day by day, she found strength in the unborn child she carried. Each flutter, each kick reminded her that life goes on, that hope remains. Her mother and father were her pillars of support. They transformed a spare room in their house into a makeshift nursery, complete with a second-hand crib, pastel walls, and little stuffed animals. They tried to distract Elena with baby name ideas and daily reassurance that she wasn't alone. Through it all, Elena discovered an inner reservoir of courage she never realized she possessed. Perhaps it was the maternal instinct kicking in, or the shocking reality that she had no choice but to fight for a secure future. Either way, every day she mustered the will to stand tall, gather paperwork, communicate with Jordan, and prepare for the arrival of her precious child. Meanwhile, Dahlia Cruz, the mistress, inserted herself into the situation with shameless audacity. She began posting pictures of her and Marcus on social media, extravagant trips, luxurious dinners, and even captions that hinted at upcoming big changes in our life. Elena tried to avoid looking at them, but well-meaning friends would occasionally send screenshots, outraged on her behalf. Word got around the local circles that Marcus Langford and Dahlia Cruz were soon to be an it couple. People who once respected Marcus for his professional acumen were now whispering behind his back. The scandal of leaving a heavily pregnant wife was difficult to sugarcoat, and while some might not vocalize their disapproval publicly, especially his corporate peers, Elena sensed a shift in the general attitude. Dahlia's open flaunting of wealth also drew scrutiny. She boasted about newly acquired properties, referencing luxurious condos in downtown Columbia that Marcus had apparently purchased. Jordan identified these as potentially the very investments Elena's money had helped acquire. The blatant bragging lit a renewed fire under Elena's resolve. Anger mingled with heartbreak, fueling her determination to see justice done. Friends of Marcus's parents also got wind of the situation. His mother, Margaret, attempted to reach out to Elena, apologizing tearfully for her son's actions. Margaret insisted she had no idea how this had happened, that Marcus was not raised to treat family like disposable commodities. She offered whatever help she could, but Marcus had severed many ties, ignoring phone calls and messages from his own family. Elena appreciated Margaret's remorse, but remained cautious. After all, Marcus's betrayal had happened right under everyone's nose. Could a mother truly be ignorant of her son's ongoing affair? It was hard to tell where the lines of complicity or oblivion lay. The press of time weighed heavily on Elena. Any day now, she could go into labor. She had nightmares of giving birth alone, or worse, having to face hospital bills without secure finances. Jordan reassured her that her medical insurance was still intact, at least for the moment, and that they were petitioning the court for emergency spousal support based on the unborn child's well-being. In the midst of the turmoil, an unexpected ally emerged. Marty Fletcher, a senior partner at Marcus's accounting firm. He reached out to Elena one evening, politely asking for a meeting. Initially wary, Elena and Jordan agreed to meet him in a public cafe. Marty was a seasoned professional in his mid-50s, with kind eyes and a somber demeanor. He explained that he had mentored Marcus when he first joined the firm. "I've always been proud of the talent he showed," Marty lamented, sipping his coffee. "But I can't condone what he's done to you. I also can't pretend ignorance about certain questionable activities related to the firm's clients." Elena's heart pounded. Was Marty indicating that Marcus hadn't just betrayed her personally, but possibly had some unethical dealings at work? Marty lowered his voice. "I've been going through records. There are discrepancies in Marcus's handling of a few high-profile accounts, transactions that suggest he might be skimming funds or diverting them into private ventures. If you have a forensic accountant look into your shared finances, you might find a direct link. Some of these accounts," he added carefully, "involve clients tied to international investments. If this blows up, it won't just affect him. It could trigger regulatory attention." Jordan was immediately intrigued. "Are you saying you have evidence of financial fraud?" Marty nodded. "Not fully ironclad yet, but I suspect enough to warrant further investigation. And between us," he continued, "the firm won't protect him if it gets worse. They're already discussing internal disciplinary actions. If Marcus becomes a liability, they'll cut him loose fast. I came to you because, well, I hate seeing Elena, Someone who once came to our office Christmas parties with such joy, going through this. And if Marcus is committing fraud, the firm has a duty to investigate. I need you to know that you're not alone, and that Marcus may have left a paper trail that helps your legal battle." Grateful but cautious, Elena thanked Marty. Jordan asked for any documentation he could provide. Though Marty had to protect the firm's interests, he agreed to discreetly share non-confidential details that could lead Elena's forensic accountant in the right direction. Before leaving, Marty hesitated, then added softly, "He's not the man we thought he was, Elena. I'm sorry." Elena left that meeting with a flicker of hope. If Marcus had been funneling money illegally, there could be serious legal repercussions for him. It also meant that the courts might look at Elena more sympathetically, especially regarding spousal and child support. Just days after meeting Marty, Elena's body signaled that labor was near. She felt contractions sporadically, and her doctor placed her on high alert. Emotionally, she was at a tipping point. Torn between the fear of giving birth amid a storm of marital strife and the urgent need to protect her child's future. The thought of holding her baby for the first time both calmed and terrified her. Would she cry from love, or from the heartbreak of doing it alone? Marcus, seemingly indifferent, continued his life of luxury with Dahlia. Social media posts showed them at high-end restaurants, shopping for designer clothes, and even vacationing on a beach in Florida. The blatant disregard made Elena's blood boil. Jordan advised her to keep calm, to focus on her health. "He's digging his own grave, legally," Jordan insisted. "The more he flaunts ill-gotten wealth, the bigger the backlash." One late evening, Elena's water broke. Her parents rushed her to Lexington Medical Center in downtown Columbia, a well-respected medical institution. Her labor was grueling, lasting nearly 19 hours. Fear mingled with excitement, overshadowed by the heartbreak of not having the baby's father by her side. But she drew on her internal strength, fueled by her mother's unwavering support, Jordan's encouraging texts, and the memory of everything she'd fought for. Finally, Elena brought a healthy baby boy into the world. She named him Aiden. Holding him in her arms, tears streaming down her face, she felt an overwhelming surge of love. In that moment, everything else fell away. The betrayal, the divorce, the financial ruin. All that mattered was the tiny life cradled against her chest, taking in his first lungfuls of air. Word spread quickly that Elena had given birth. Marcus didn't show up at the hospital, nor did he call or text, but Margaret, Marcus's mother, came, tears of guilt and joy mixing on her face. She held baby Aiden tenderly, apologizing profusely for her son's absence. Elena, exhausted, nodded politely, offering no condemnation but also no forgiveness. She had to set boundaries. Her only priority now was Aiden's welfare. A few weeks postpartum, Elena was still recovering when Jordan arrived with game-changing news. The forensic accountant had found enough discrepancies to file a formal complaint against Marcus, both personally and through the firm. Marty had discreetly opened an internal investigation as well. If proven, Marcus could face legal action for embezzlement or fraud, which could also void certain property transfers if they were purchased with illegitimate funds. This revelation felt like the first true triumph Elena had experienced since the ordeal began. She gazed down at Aiden, who was sleeping in her arms, and allowed herself a moment of relief. Maybe there was a path to reclaim some of what she had lost. Jordan wasn't finished. "We're also filing a motion to establish paternity and seek temporary and permanent child support," she said. "His attempt to divorce you without providing for his newborn son is unacceptable, and the courts will see it that way." Elena nodded. She knew the road ahead was long, but she was ready. The heartbreak had morphed into resolute determination. She no longer cared for Marcus's love, only for what Aiden deserved and for the justice Elena herself needed to move on. The first hearing took place in a small courtroom in Richland County. Elena arrived with Jordan, her parents, and baby Aiden in a carrier, too young to understand the weight of the moment. Marcus strode in with his high-priced attorney at his side. Dahlia did not attend, presumably uninterested in the legal processes of the man whose wealth she enjoyed. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint Elena as an unstable spouse who drove Marcus away. They claimed Elena was obsessive, hinting at her attempts to monitor his spending. They argued that the assets in question were the result of Marcus's sole professional efforts. Jordan, unflinching, presented a detailed timeline of how the couple had intermingled finances for years. She provided documentation showing Elena's contributions. She also introduced the suspicious transfers and triggered the mention of potential workplace fraud. Allegations the judge, a sharp-eyed woman, cut through the noise to address. She ordered a temporary freeze on all assets pending further investigation. She also ordered Marcus to pay temporary child support and demanded a paternity test, a simple step given everyone knew the truth, but recognized the legal necessity. Marcus's face was a storm cloud of anger. He hadn't expected Elena to come prepared, let alone find holes in his carefully orchestrated plan. His jaw tightened, his knuckles white as he clutched the table. His eyes didn't meet hers, not once. In that moment, it was clear. He no longer held control of the narrative. As they exited the courtroom, Jordan turned to Elena with a tired but victorious smile. It's a long fight ahead, but today was a good start. Indeed, Elena felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in months. Holding baby Aiden, she realized she was no longer the helpless victim. She was a mother, a fighter, and she had no intention of backing down. Something shifted in her spine that day. Resolve hardened like steel. While the legal wheels turned, Dahlia's patience seemed to wear thin. Whispers circulated that she was pressuring Marcus to finalize the divorce quickly so they could marry and legitimize their relationship in upper social circles. She wanted more. She wanted the status of being Mrs. Langford, not just a well-kept mistress. But with Elena's legal pushback and the asset freeze, Marcus wasn't in a position to lavish Dahlia with the same level of luxury. Unexplained bank holds and sudden restrictions on large expenditures vexed her. She began to see that Marcus was less the endless golden goose she'd believed him to be. The sparkle in his gifts dimmed quickly when matched with legal complications and limited funds. Rumors reached Elena that Dahlia had started flirting with other wealthy men at the parties she and Marcus attended. She was simply hedging her bets. If Marcus fell from grace, she wanted a backup plan. Dahlia wasn't built for struggle, she was built for spotlight. And Marcus's light was fading fast. Elena initially refused to engage in such gossip, preferring to keep her head down and focus on Aiden. But Jordan insisted they'd pay attention. If Dahlia and Marcus parted ways, that might simplify the asset investigations. Sure enough, cracks appeared in their public facade. Passive-aggressive social media comments, the sudden disappearance of couple photos, and cryptic posts from Dahlia about disappointments and cutting losses. Within a few months, Dahlia was seen on the arm of a different millionaire, an older, influential figure in the fashion scene. Marcus, humiliated, tried to hide the breakup, but word eventually reached everyone. His mistress had essentially used him and moved on, especially once his finances were no longer as fluid. The betrayal he had inflicted on Elena had come full circle. It was a twist of karma that neither Elena nor Jordan could ignore. With Dahlia gone, Marcus's life began unraveling more rapidly. The firm concluded its internal investigation, and while they were guarded about the findings, Marty informed Jordan that Marcus was given a choice: resign quietly or face public charges. In the end, Marcus resigned, hoping to dodge a major scandal. But Jordan and Elena's forensic accountant kept building evidence of funds misappropriated from the marital pot. Faced with mounting legal fees and the sudden cold shoulder from the professional community, Marcus's finances took a nosedive. He was forced to downgrade his luxurious apartment, eventually moving into a smaller, modest place. On top of that, the judge handling Elena's case had little sympathy for him. The paternity test confirmed Aiden was his biological son. Child support was set at a level reflecting his previous income before his downfall. Jordan fought to maintain that figure, citing that Marcus's job loss was a result of his own wrongdoing, not a natural economic shift. Marcus grew desperate, attempting to contact Elena directly, begging her to settle out of court for lower payments. He pleaded that he had no job, that the asset freeze had left him penniless, and that if they continued this legal war, everyone would lose. Elena refused. She no longer had any illusions. She stated firmly that any negotiations would go through her attorney. The man who once cast her aside in her most vulnerable state now found himself on the receiving end of life's harsh justice. For Alina, the resolution of the legal entanglements couldn't come soon enough. The messy process dragged out over many months, but the court eventually ruled that the majority of assets transferred fraudulently to Dahlia had to be liquidated, with a substantial portion reverting to Elena as compensation. Meanwhile, Jordan secured a permanent child support ruling that could be revisited only if Marcus secured stable employment and petitioned the court. By the time Aiden was a year old, Elena had managed to stabilize her life. She found a modest rental near her parents, continuing her work in counseling part-time while devoting most of her energy to Aiden. The emotional scars were still raw, but with therapy, family support, and time, she began to heal. She learned to navigate single motherhood, discovering joy in simple daily milestones: Aiden's first tooth, first steps, the first time he said, "Mama." She would occasionally hear about Marcus's misfortunes through the grapevine, how he struggled to maintain a steady job with a tarnished reputation, how he hopped from one consulting gig to another, burdened by child support obligations. Initially, Alina felt satisfaction knowing that karma had arrived for him, but eventually she grew indifferent. Her focus was forward. Holding on to anger would only poison her own future. One day, while picking Aiden up from daycare, Elena ran into an old acquaintance, Julian Reyes, a fellow counselor who worked at a nearby community center. They had once attended a professional workshop together. He recognized her, said hello, and asked how she was doing. Elena offered a genuine smile. "It's been a long time," she admitted. "Life has changed a lot." They chatted for a few moments, exchanging updates. Julian mentioned that his community center was looking to expand their child development programs and needed someone with Elena's expertise. With the divorce proceedings nearing their final end, Elena felt more open to new opportunities. She decided to visit Julian's center, curious about a fresh start. The place was bustling with children, from toddlers to teenagers, each with their own challenges and triumphs. Elena felt an immediate draw. This was the environment she thrived in, where she could make a meaningful impact. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a woman who had been broken. She felt like a woman rebuilding. Over the next few weeks, she interviewed for the position, and to her delight, they offered her a role coordinating family counseling programs. That same day, the final divorce decree was issued. Though Marcus tried to contest many points, the judge ruled largely in Elena's favor. The marriage was legally over, but Elena's future, at long last, felt open and hopeful. It wasn't just a document, it was a release. Standing in her new office, baby Aiden in a playpen nearby, Elena breathed a sigh of relief. The storm had finally passed. The next time Elena saw Marcus was a chance encounter at a grocery store. She was placing a carton of milk into her cart when she spotted him in the aisle, pushing a nearly empty cart, gazing at discounted produce. Her heart tensed. She almost turned to leave, not wanting a confrontation, but he noticed her and walked over. He looked older, thinner, and the confident spark was gone. The lines on his face hinted at stress and regret. His clothes were wrinkled, his shoes worn. He looked like a man fraying at the edges. He peered at Aiden, who was babbling in the child's seat. "He's grown," Marcus said quietly, eyes flickering with something akin to remorse. Elena nodded. "Yes, he has." An awkward silence stretched between them. Marcus swallowed hard as if wrestling with emotions. How are you?" "I'm managing," Elena replied, her voice firm. She wasn't unkind, but neither was she inviting him back in. Marcus shifted, struggling with what to say next. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered, his voice trembling, "for everything." Elena blinked, her chest constricting with mixed emotions. She could say 1,000 things, how deeply he'd hurt her, how his betrayal had nearly destroyed her life, but she just sighed. "You'll have to live with your choices, Marcus. I'm focusing on our child. Please just keep up with your child's support and refrain from making things difficult." He nodded, shame coloring his features. Elena turned and walked away, Aiden giggling at the motion of the cart. In that moment, Marcus looked like a broken man, weighed down by the consequences of his selfish actions. The final blow of karma had landed, and there was no escaping it now. Over time, Elena's new job blossomed into a fulfilling career. She made a difference in the lives of countless children and families, using her own experiences to guide her empathy. She and Julian developed a warm camaraderie, often collaborating on programs to strengthen family relationships and support single parents. Slowly, Alina allowed herself to consider the possibility of happiness beyond the shadows of her past marriage. As Aidan grew, he thrived under his mother's care and the loving influence of Alina's parents. He spent weekends exploring parks, attending local festivals, and learning about the world with wide-eyed curiosity. Alina introduced him to sports, reading, and the arts, wanting to nurture his individuality. She resolved to never let him feel unloved or unwanted, the way Marcus's actions might have once implied. Legally, Marcus remained responsible for child support. He was inconsistent at times, leading to stern reminders from the court, but Alina refused to chase him with anger. If the money came, it went toward Aidan's needs. If it didn't, Alina managed with her income and help from her parents. She refused to let bitterness consume her. Eventually, as Alina's new life took shape, people forgot the scandal of how Marcus Langford had left his pregnant wife for a mistress. They only remembered that she had managed to land on her feet. Alina's dignity and resilience overshadowed the ugliness of what she endured. And though she still carried emotional scars, each day she proved that her spirit was unbreakable. One evening, Alina received a letter in the mail from a lawyer representing Marcus. She felt a twinge of anxiety but opened it nonetheless. The letter explained that Marcus was considering bankruptcy and needed to renegotiate child support terms. Jordan reviewed the document with Alina, shaking her head at the nerve of it. Marcus had run himself into a financial corner, and now he wanted leniency. Alina weighed her options. She knew that if Marcus truly had no income, the courts might reduce the support. But Jordan also reminded her that if Marcus claimed bankruptcy, any fraud-related judgments might not be dischargeable, and he would still owe for child support, which typically cannot be absolved through bankruptcy. The entire situation reeked of desperation on Marcus's part. After a week of reflection, Alina decided not to challenge any basic rearrangements that were lawful and fair. She had no interest in revenge. If Marcus was truly bankrupt, forcing him into a corner wouldn't help Aidan. She instructed Jordan to handle the matter with calm pragmatism. "He made his bed," she told Jordan, "but I don't want to fight for the sake of fighting." Such an attitude further set Alina apart. While her boundaries were firm, she had no intention of letting Marcus off easily if he tried to dodge responsibilities. She also had no desire to become a spiteful, vindictive ex. But that didn't mean her heart wasn't still learning how to trust again. The memory of heartbreak still lingered, but she let time and the presence of love in her life shape her into a more compassionate person rather than a bitter one. Julian's support went beyond professional collaboration. He'd watch Aidan while Alina handled administrative tasks, earning the toddler's enthusiastic trust. Over months of shared lunches, planning sessions, and laughter, Alina noticed a gentle shift in their relationship dynamic. There were moments, fleeting glances, shared smiles, that hinted at something deeper, but she tucked them away, afraid to name them too soon. One Saturday, after a successful charity event for the community center, Julian invited Alina to dinner. She nervously accepted, unsure whether it was merely colleagues celebrating or something more personal. She almost canceled twice. Part of her was scared that letting someone in again would open wounds she worked so hard to heal. During the meal, which was filled with genuine conversation and quiet moments of mutual understanding, Alina realized how much she valued Julian's empathy. She didn't feel rushed or pressured, just accepted for who she was. A single mother with a complicated past. No masks, no judgment, just warmth. At the end of the evening, Julian walked Alina to her car. The chemistry was evident, albeit subdued, rooted in friendship and mutual respect. He hesitated before speaking. "I know you've been through a lot. I'd never want to take advantage of your vulnerability, but I care about you, Alina. About Aidan, too." His sincerity brought tears to Alina's eyes. She wasn't ready to jump into a relationship instantly, but for the first time since Marcus's betrayal, she felt a real glimmer of hope that love could still find her. They agreed to take things slowly, letting trust grow at a natural pace, always mindful that Aidan's well-being was paramount. Weeks turned into months as the tangled threads of Elena's legal battle slowly unraveled. Even after she had been granted temporary child support and gained some measure of protection from Marcus's financial maneuverings, the courts continued to sift through piles of evidence and complicated asset transfers. Each new hearing brought fresh waves of emotion, reminding Elena of how deeply she had been wronged and how important it was for her to keep fighting for a fair outcome. At times, Elena found it difficult to stay patient. She was now a mother, juggling the demands of a young child, Aiden's daily needs, and her own healing process. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she remembered the terror she had experienced when Marcus first demanded a divorce at 8 months pregnant, and that memory fueled her resolve. If she had survived that earth-shattering betrayal, she could navigate the slow churn of the legal system. Jordan remained steadfast, meticulously preparing every document and piece of evidence. She refused to let Marcus's high-priced attorneys bury them in technicalities. "I won't allow them to weaponize paperwork," she often said. "We're going to meet every challenge they present, head-on." Her tenacity paid off. One by one, the courts acknowledged Elena's legitimate claims, that her earnings had contributed to their properties and investments, and that the elaborate transfers to Dahlia had been orchestrated in bad faith. The final court date was a brisk winter morning, the kind that made the courthouse steps slick with frost. Elena dressed in a simple but professional outfit, determined to exude calm confidence. She held Aiden's small hand as her parents accompanied her for moral support, though they stayed in the hallway during the proceedings. Inside the courtroom, Marcus arrived alone. No mistress, no family, just him and his lawyer. Gone was the swagger and self-assured grin he used to wear like a badge. His shoulders sagged and he wore dark circles under his eyes. The veneer of wealth and success had long since cracked, revealing a hollow, weary man. When the judge entered, the courtroom fell silent. Over the next few hours, each attorney laid out their final arguments. Elena sat quietly while Jordan spoke on her behalf, recounting everything from the questionable financial transfers to the moral gravity of Marcus's decision to leave a pregnant wife for another woman. Jordan handled the facts with clinical precision, but Elena could feel the passion behind her words. Marcus's lawyer tried to minimize Elena's contributions and maintain that Marcus's career had been the main source of the couple's prosperity. But the evidence told a different story. Bank statements, home loan, documents, and eyewitness testimonies from colleagues like Marty, who had hinted at potential fraud, painted a damning portrait of Marcus's scheming. In the end, there was little Marcus's side could do but attempt to appeal to the judge for leniency, citing his recent unemployment and dwindling resources. Finally, the judge looked over her notes, cleared her throat, and delivered the ruling that everyone in the courtroom had been waiting for. She declared the divorce final and equitable distribution of marital property essential. She confirmed that the bulk of the couple's assets had been fraudulently reallocated to Dahlia and were to be liquidated or reclaimed, with Elena receiving a significant share of the proceeds. The remaining properties under Marcus's name would be subject to close scrutiny to ensure fair compensation for Elena. The judge also upheld the child support order, stating that any unemployment or financial losses Marcus suffered were largely his own doing. A hush settled over the room as the verdict sank in. Elena's eyes brimmed with tears, not of sorrow, but of immense relief. She hadn't wanted vengeance. She wanted justice. She wanted her child to have the security that Marcus had tried to steal away. After the judge called for an adjournment, Jordan gently squeezed Elena's arm. "We did it," she whispered. Elena nodded, exhaling a shaky breath she felt she'd been holding for years. On her way out, Elena looked briefly at Marcus. His face was pale, set in a rigid expression that bordered on despair. For a flicker of a moment, she almost felt sorry for him, almost. But then she remembered the cruelty he'd inflicted upon her. How he'd cast her aside at her most vulnerable and moved every hard-earned asset into another woman's name. The pang of pity dissolved, replaced by the recognition that this was the fate he had chosen. Outside the courtroom, Elena's parents immediately embraced her, tears shining in their eyes as they praised her for her courage. Her father clapped Jordan on the back, thanking her for her relentless work. Holding Aiden, Alina realized that while the legal war might still generate a few aftershocks, like enforcement of payments or minor disputes, this was the decisive victory she desperately needed. The weight of uncertainty lifted from her shoulders, and in its place blossomed a sense of possibility for the future. In the weeks that followed, Elena and Jordan worked on finalizing the administrative steps. There were forms to sign, bank accounts to unfreeze, and the process of liquidating any assets that the court ordered returned to Elena. She took a portion of her settlement to create an education fund for Aiden, ensuring that her son would never lack opportunities. And she saved the rest, determined to rebuild her life responsibly. Although she was relieved to shut the door on Marcus's manipulations, Elena remained pragmatic. She knew that staying vigilant was essential. If Marcus tried to circumvent the judgment or claimed he couldn't pay child support, Jordan would be there to safeguard Aiden's rights. But a larger part of her hoped that eventually he would step up as a father in some capacity, or at least make peace with the child he had once so callously disregarded. By the time the dust settled, Elena felt a profound sense of triumph, one that wasn't flashy or ostentatious, but quietly freeing. She was free to pursue her career, raise Aiden in a secure home, and begin envisioning a life in which she could heal fully and perhaps love again. The final resolution wasn't just a legal victory. It was the turning point that allowed Elena to reclaim her power. She had emerged from the storm, battered but unbroken. And with that knowledge, she stepped forward into a new chapter, holding her son's hand and carrying her head high. One bright morning, Elena sat on the porch of her parents' home, watching Aiden toddle around the yard, chasing butterflies and laughing gleefully. The sun's warmth felt like a gentle embrace. Her mother offered her a mug of tea and kissed the top of her head, proud of the daughter who had overcome so much. In the soft rustle of wind and the sound of her son's laughter, Elena felt something she hadn't known in years: peace. Elena could scarcely believe how far she'd come. She thought of all the twists: falling in love with Marcus, the illusions of a perfect marriage, the heartbreak of learning the truth, the pain of divorce, the betrayal with Dahlia, the legal battles, and ultimately, the rebirth of her spirit. She smiled softly at Aiden, who stumbled and looked up with a grin, unfazed by life's small obstacles. In that moment, Elena recognized that the hardest chapters of her journey had shaped her into a more resilient, compassionate person. She felt gratitude for the unwavering support of her family, the fierce advocacy of Jordan, and the unexpected help from people like Marty. Most of all, she marveled at the boundless love she had for her son. She whispered a silent prayer, thanking life, fate, or whatever cosmic forces governed the world. Then, rising slowly from her chair, she stepped down into the yard, took Aiden's hand and began walking across the grass, toward whatever came next. She was free, and the future lay wide open. In her heart, she knew that this was not merely an ending, but the true beginning of a life lived on her own terms. And so ends the saga of heartbreak and redemption, proving that even when life plunges you into despair, resilience and justice can emerge, triumphant. Dear friend, life will test you, not always with thunder, but sometimes with silence, loss, and the slow unraveling of everything you thought was certain. Elena's story is not just about betrayal, it's about the quiet strength it takes to rebuild from nothing. As the Stoics taught us, we do not control what happens, only how we respond, and in that response lies our freedom. Elena chose dignity over vengeance, healing over hate. She reminded us that peace is not something handed to us. It's something we carve out, breath by breath, from the ruins. If you're in your own storm, hold on, you are stronger than you know. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be broken. If this story moved you, consider giving it a like, sharing it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribing for more journeys that prove the human spirit is unshakable.